Hi everyone, and welcome to our next homework review video. This video is going to concentrate on the content that is from week 6, and I'm going to be focusing on the verbal reasoning. So if you're in year 5, and of course this is the end of block 5, hopefully you can watch this video through. This will give clarification on all those answers within your verbal reasoning homework. As always, there'll be a separate video that will go through some of the non-verbal reasoning. So looking forward to going through this video with you. We'll put Billy up in the corner so he don't distract you. And we're actually going to work through tasks within your Let's Verbal Reasoning book. That has been the main book that you know you've used during this block, and you'll be pleased to know really that this is the last opportunity to go through some of the tasks. If there is anything outstanding, then of course would ask you to finish it off, but well done, you've done really well within this book. So the tasks that I'm actually going to go through are all the ones that were linked to the question types that you had in your lessons. So I'm going to focus on code sets. We're also going to look at word analogies, letter connections. Those are sometimes called insert the letter. And we're also going to look at hidden words. So this particular video will go through every single question within week 6. And hopefully it will really help you mark your homework and understand how you've got on. Let's have a look at the first task. So the first one was code sets. And we did talk about these within the lessons. These ones do involve quite a lot of strategy, and certainly, as I mentioned in the lesson, quite a bit of trial and error as well. Let's just have a brief look at the example. So the idea is you've got 4 words, and within those 4 words you have to match up 3 codes. So what that means is one of those words is not going to be required. So the first thing to do with these is always look at letters that are the same in the same position, or also looking at numbers that appear in the same position. And it's quite obvious here. We've got 8 and 4, so that indicates that those 2 letters have to be the same. So we've got a P and an A and a P and an A. These words we begin with TE and BE, so we know the 8 and the 4 must be a P and an A. Now what I will be doing during this video, just to make it slightly easier for you to see, is I will be writing out the codes, the number codes, just slightly bigger so it's easier for you to see, and then I will be matching them up, and then we'll answer the questions underneath. So as we were saying here, 8 and the 4, so we've got PA, PA. Therefore, what we can look at now is the next 2 numbers. We know we've got 2 5s here. Well, that must be the same letter, and of course then that must mean that that is pass, and then this is passed with a T on the end, so we've got the 7 and the T. So that really helps me with this one over here, because that gives me 2 of the letters, and obviously with test it begins with a T and finishes with a T, so that becomes test. Then you're going to have a series of questions underneath. Quite interestingly, sometimes you'll be asked to work out the word that you didn't actually use within your matching part of this question. So do look out for that. And certainly when you're working through these, and I hope you've been doing this, they do involve, sometimes you'll try something and it won't quite work, and then you need to go back and try again. So perseverance, I think, is super important on these questions. Right, let's have a look at the first one. So the first thing I would notice here is that we've got a C and a U. I'm just going to do this in red. So we've got C and a U, C and a U. So again, looking at the numbers, are there 2 numbers the same at the beginning of any of these codes? Well, we've got a 2 and a 3, 2 and a 3. So that really helps me. So I'm actually going to fill that in now. C and U and C and U. Because the other words, of course, began with RU and RE. Now, what I will certainly look at is if we've got a 2 and a 3, do 2 and 3 appear within the code that we're left with? Well, no, they don't. So that rules out then ruin, because there's no U, so there's no 3 as the second letter. So the 5 must be an E coming from rain. So I hope that made sense, because we'd already worked out the C and the U, so we knew that the 3 was a U. But to be the right code for ruin, then the second letter should have been 3, but it wasn't. So this means that this must be rain. And then what we can do is we can look at cure and cute and see whether we can work out which they should stand for. So we've got the 5 at the end must be the same. So we know, of course, that is an E. And we'd already worked out on rain that the 7 was an R. So that makes that cure, and then that must be cute. Now we can actually start doing the questions. Find the code for the word cure. So that's going to be 2, 3, 7 and a 5. Find the word that has the number code 7519. Well, that would be rain. So we've already done that. Now, as I did point out earlier, sometimes you may have to work out the word that you didn't require when you were matching them up. You may still have to work out the code for. Now, we know all the numbers for ruin, so we can do R is the 7, the U is the 3, the I is the 1, and then the N is the 9. So it'll be 7319. So hopefully you managed to get those. Obviously the hardest part is the matching. Once you've done the matching, hopefully you'll be able to easily work out the questions underneath. Let's go and have a look at the next one that you need to match up. So again, I've actually written the codes down underneath just to make it easier for ourselves in terms of when we match them up. The first thing I notice here is we've got a 6 in the 3rd position in 2 of the number codes. So let's have a look at the words and see if there's a letter that appears in the 3rd position, and we do. We have an N, so I'm going to put N there, and that means I can put an N here. Now there's only one word beginning with N, and that's newt, so I can put newt in here, and this is really going to help me because that means now that I know what a 5 is. Well, that's a W, and the only word that begins with a W is wand. And then over here, because sometimes it can be a good idea to do this, is to just sort of rule out the words, and it just sort of focuses you on what you're trying to do. So we've got a 7 here, which is the T, so we know there'll be a T at the end. And then we've got a 1 and we've got a 9. Well, we worked out over here that the 1 was an A, so that makes that aunt. And then we could rule out aunt, and dent was the word that we didn't need, but of course you can see here we're still going to need to work that out. So what's the code for wand? It's 5, 1, 6 and a 4. What is the word for 6357? We work that out to be newt. And then what's the code for dent? So I'm going to have to use what I've been given. So we've got a 4 for the D. The E will be a 3, the N will be a 6, and the T will be a 7. So the code is 4, 3, 6 and a 7. Well done, again, if you managed to get those all correct. I think certainly with these, they do take a little bit longer. So if you didn't manage to finish them all in the time, don't worry. The more you practice these, the better I'm sure you will get. Let's have a look at the last one. So as we did with the previous questions, I've written down the codes down the bottom just to guide us a little bit, and then hopefully you'll be able to work out how we're going to match them up. So it is important with these, if we first of all look at, are there any numbers that appear in the same position that might help us work out some of the letters. And you'll see here that we've got 2 U's, so that comes in the 2nd position, not the R, and then we've got an I, so they're different. So what that enables us to do is we're going to just pair these up. So we've got the 6 must be a U, so I'm just going to put the U down there like that. Then what we can do from that is we can see that, of course, one of them, the 5, is either going to be an R, or it's going to be the 9 is going to be the M, or the other way round. So I'm just going to put for 5 here, I'm just going to write R and M, because that will really help me. Now, if I come and have a look over here, I have got a 5 in this code, so I've decided it needs to be either an R or an M. Well, if we look at the 3rd letter over here for limp, yes, that's got to be an M, because we know it can't be any other letter because we've got an I over here. So I'm going to put the M in here, and that enables us to make this limp. And now we can work out the rest of the codes because we've got some of those numbers that can help us work out the others. because we've got the 5 here, we've got the M. This must be must. And this must be ruse over here. Now, if you didn't know what ruse meant, it means a trick. So if you do want to put that in your word and meaning book, just write that here for you. Try not to go behind Billy, a trick. So let's see if we can work out the codes. So we've got ruse is 9, 6, 4, 1. Then we've got 5, 6, 4, 8, and that must be must. And then we've got the code for trim. So we need to work this one out because it was one of the words we didn't use. So T will be the 8. The R will be the 9. The I will be the E. Sorry, will be the 1. And then, if I've done that correctly, let me just go back and, no, sorry, haven't done that correctly. Let me start that. I'm going to start that one again. So, sorry, we've got T is the 8. The R was the 9. That's better. Then the I was the 3. And then the M was the 5. So, sorry, the code should have been 8935. So well done on those. If you've managed to match them all up, obviously give them a good tick if you've got those correct. And let's move on to the next set. So there's actually 2 sets that you had to do for your homework. We're now going to focus our attentions on test 47. So if I can ask you to go to test 47, and then we're going to work down through these and see again if we can match them up. So let's go and have a look. Now, first thing I've noticed on here, if we look at how we're going to match these up, is we've got a 7 that appears in all of them. So I think probably the best idea is to see which is the second letter. Well, of course, it's an E. So it's certainly worth doing those ones just quickly, just so you've got that established. So we know that the 7 equals an E. Then it might be worth having a look possibly at the the 6 rather. Having a look, seeing if the 6 helps us at all. No, maybe I'll now look at the 2. So maybe the 2 can guide us. The 2 is the last number. So we need to see, is there a number that appears? Well, obviously it is. We've got a T. So we know that's a T, and we know that that's a T. So again, sometimes it can be a case that if you don't see it straight away, you can just go with what you definitely know. So using the 2, using the 7s, and then we can work from there. Now, the number 8 appears in the 3rd and the 4th position. So let's have a look at the 8. So we've got the 3rd, here we are, and we've got the 4th. So therefore, if we know then that the 8 represents an S, this means that this one must be lens. That's the only option for that one. And then because we've got this 6 being the N, that makes that nest. So again, I've done lens and I've done nest, and now I'm left with 2. Now what we can work out from this is that if we've got a 5 and a 1, so we've either got, it's either going to be belt or best. So again, we've just got to establish, well, because we've got the 8 as the S and there's no 8 in there, then I know that that must be belt. So now we can actually work out the questions. So nest, what was the code? 6, 7, 8 and a 2. What was the word for 1752? Well, we've got belt. And then we still need to work out we've got to work out a code for bent. Bent wasn't one of our words, but we can still work it out because we've got all the letters. So the B was the 1, E was the 7, the N was the 6, and the T was the 2. So we're looking at 1762. So again, give those a tick if you've got those correct. Let's move on to the next one. So again, let's have a look. Now these ones again do start to get a little bit more challenging, but let's see if we can work them out. So the first thing I'm going to do is look at the 1, because the 1 is in the same position. It's in the 2nd position, so it must represent the same letter. So that indicates that that must be the O. So that's a good start. Now, because we've only got one other word that contains a different second letter, we've got the U here in Ruby. So that means that the 3 here must be a U. Because if it had been a 1, then we know that would be another O. So we know that this word, and this makes it a lot easier, is going to be Ruby. Now I can take the Y over here to make yolk. And then I've got 2, 1, 3, 5. Well, I know that the 5 is an R. So we know that this must be sour. So what's the code for Ruby? Let's write that one down. So we've got 5, 3, 4, and a 7. Then this word was sour. And then we need to work out the code for boys. So this wasn't one that we'd actually done. So we've got 4. The O was a 1. Then we've got 7 for the Y. And then we've got 2 for the S. And then we've only got one more set left. So again, we can have a little look first of all at the numbers, if there's any numbers that appear in the same positions. Well, interestingly here, if we look at the second letter again of the words, there's an I, and so we know we've got 2 numbers that are the same. So we can write I underneath the 3. Now we can focus on, let's have a look at a different number here. So we can see that the 9 appears as the second letter and the 4th position. So this must equate to, let's have a look if we've got any second and 4th. Yes, we have. So we've got an E. So we can go with E there and E here. Now, the only word that ends in an E is mine. So the mine is 4, 3, 5, 9. And then the second one is helm. Second code. So the 7 is an H. So that allows me to complete this H over here. So that was helm. And this will then be nigh. Nigh is an old-fashioned word that means near. It's quite archaic, actually. 2. So that's the G. So I used nigh, didn't use Glen, mine, and helm. Let's see if we can work out the codes, but we've really done the hard work already. So 5, 3, 2, 7. And then we've got 4, 3, 5, 9 is mine. And then we've got Glen, and we will need to work Glen out, even though it wasn't one that we matched. So G is the 2, the L is the 1, the E is the 9, and the N is the 5. So we've got 2195. Right, guys, hopefully you've been able to mark all of those code sets, and I hope you've done really well with those. Let's move on to some word analogies. Now, word analogies are where we have to find a link between the words, but we need to ensure that the link that we make is the same. So whatever you do on the first pair, so in this example, hot is to cold, so they're obviously opposites. And then we've got expensive. What's the opposite of expensive? It's going to be cheap. So it's really important that when you are doing these, the relationship you find is the same. So we're going to have a look at test 28 first of all. Now, I've done a few little pictures as we go through just to give you an idea of some of the things. Sometimes a picture can give you a bit more information. What do they say? A picture can speak 1,000 words, can't they? Just to give you a bit more of a guidance on some of these key words. And it is worth having your word and meaning book out as well. So the first bit, bracelet is to beads, because we know their sort of beads make up a bracelet, and of course there are keys on a typewriter, and here's a picture of a typewriter. So give that one a tick if you got that right. To taunt, if you taunt someone, you kind of ridicule them, you tease them, you taunt them. So we are looking here at synonyms, and I think when we've seen these before, certainly in the lesson, we talked about whether they're antonyms, whether they're synonyms, but this one is a synonyms example. So it's taunt is to ridicule, as revel is in to celebrate. So those are synonyms. Blackboard is to chalk, because of course we use chalk on a blackboard, and on a notepad you would use a pen. So again, whatever I have on the first set, I must have on the second pair of words. Enemy is to quarrel. Words are verbs that relate to the noun, so enemy and quarrel. And then we've got friend and cherish. So hopefully you got that one correct. And then we've got embryo to person. So an embryo is kind of what we start as before we become a person. So, and then these are the things that grow into the next item. So seed obviously grows into a plant. So embryo is to person as seed is to plant. Let's have a look at the second set. Agitated. Well, if you get agitated, you kind of get annoyed, frustrated, but relaxed is an antonym. So these are opposites. Ambivalent. Now, if you didn't know what ambivalent means, it means to be uncertain. Ambivalent. So the opposite to that is leaving no doubt, and that's unquivocal. If you're unquivocal, it leaves no doubt. Star is to constellation. I've got some constellations there. Some of you, these are all the star signs. I thought it might be quite nice to have a look at that. So star is to constellation, as actor is to troupe, because a star makes up a constellation and an actor makes up a group of actors, troupe. So well done if you got that one. Throng is to crowd. So if you have a throng of people, you have a lot of people, a big crowd. As grotto is to cave. Jubilation is to triumph, as woe is to unhappiness. So these words are synonyms again. If you didn't know what jubilation meant, put it in your word and meaning book. To be jubilant, to be really triumphant, to be happy. And then number 10, we've got sailor is to crew, as teacher is to staff. So hopefully you made the link there. Now the reason for this picture over here is these are what we call condiments. Now condiments are a bit like sort of pickles and sauces that you often have with your food, or to add flavour. You might add condiments to your food to give it flavour. So if you didn't know what a condiment is, that is the reason for that picture. Right, let's have a look at the next word analogies. This is test 48. So we've already looked at the example, and let's have a look at what we've got first of all here. Aria is to opera. So this is where you would find these different things. Soliloquy is where you would find a play. Now, a soliloquy is like a speech or a sermon or a monologue, and you would possibly find that in a play. So aria is to opera, as soliloquy is to play. So well done if you got that one. That was quite tricky. Number 2, palpable is to detestable. So what we're looking at here is we're looking at synonyms. Okay, so I'm just going to make sure that I find the right page in my book as well, so we can go through these. So we've got palpable and detectable, stout and rotund. So stout can mean sort of strong, and rotund can mean strong as well. So we've got palpable is to detectable, as stout is to rotund. Longitude is to latitude. So what we're looking at here, we're looking at antonyms, and just a diagram here to show you the longitude and the latitude, which are kind of geographical coordinates on the Earth. Parched is to drenched. Now, if you're parched, particularly if you're talking about your mouth is parched, then it's dry. So drenched is the opposite. It's kind of being wet. Okay? But you often do talk about parched, as in being dry in your mouth, feeling parched. So parched is dry, and then drenched is being wet. Tenor is to choir, because of course these are words that mean the individuals that belong to these groups. So a tenor would be in a choir, and a politician would be in government. Well done if you got that one. Number 5, we've got century is to millennium. Now these are basically 10 times bigger. So if you think of a century, that is 100 years. And a millennium is 1,000 years. So they are 10 times bigger. So we need to multiply 5 by 10, and of course we get 50. So century is to millennium as 5 is to 50. Let's move on to the next one. Regress is to backwards. So if you regress, you go backwards. If you progress, you go forwards. A rookie, which is a bit like a novice. So a novice. A rookie is a novice. So these are opposites, really. Rookie is to professional. And then infant is to an adult. So these words are antonyms. Doctor is to medicine. So a doctor is someone obviously who makes you better and is linked to medicine, whereas a police officer is linked to justice. So it's really what the words are, the area they kind of work in. A doctor works in medicine and a police officer works in justice. Hexagon is to 6. I'm sure we all knew that. Decagon, just in case you didn't know, is a 10-sided shape. And I always think of also decade as in 10 years. Might be worth you having a go at drawing a decagon. Have a go. See if you can draw a 10-sided shape. And the last one, disillusioned and enthusiastic. So these words are opposites. Enlightened and uneducated. So hopefully you did really well on those. Some of those are quite tricky, and I think it really is about trying to build up your vocabulary. That's the most important thing. Let's move on to letter connections now. Now, letter connections are all about putting a letter into a gap to complete 4 words. And the crucial thing is here that you make sure you complete 4 words, not just 2 or 3 or even 1. So it's really important the letter you put in the gap completes all 4 words. I always tend to focus on the letter strings that are slightly more complex because there's generally only 1 or 2 letters that possibly would follow that letter string anyway. So in this instance, if we look at B-E-L, there certainly aren't that many letters that would follow it. I could think of T for belt and really an L, can't think of many others. So it's going to be one or the other, and of course if you test the T, then there's lots of words that you cannot make. So we can't have made up words, it's got to be real words that we're making, but it's got to complete all 4 of those words. You can of course write the words down. Sometimes it makes it better if you write it down just to see those letters together, because these are a little bit spaced out, and also just make sure that they are words. So let's have a look at test 29. So number 1, we had a K for rack, kite, dusk and kind. Number 2, and again I think if you look at the J and the A, certainly aren't that many letters that would follow on from there. And we've got W for jaw, wind or wind, renew and wary. And we've had wary quite a bit during this block, and we've talked about that being cautious if you are wary of someone or something. King, gland, long and goat. So the G, I think definitely gland might have been the one to really focus on there. There aren't that many letters that would have gone in front of land. Curb, bake, herb and bait. Bait is something that you might use potentially in something like fishing to lure out the fish. You might use some bait. Amp, pole, keep and power. That was possibly one of the easiest ones, number 5. Certainly focusing maybe on the K, the double E. What letters could come there? Not that many. N, I suppose, but not many. So again, sometimes, a bit of trial and error. What will certainly help you in the exam is you can use the answer option letters and try and slot them in and see which one works. Clam, now that's a type of shellfish, if you didn't know what a clam is. Mark, charm and map. Arc, cone, panic and calm. So maybe looking at the A and the R, considering what letters would come. I know an E would, but C as well, so just testing which letters would come afterwards. Cut, tread, port and toast. Thaw, which means to melt. Wax, pour and wage. And then we've got sour, rain, beer and robust. Robust meaning strong. Let's have a look at the next letter connections. This was test 49. Let's see if you got the right letters here. So we've got miss, slum, pass and soul. So it was the S going in there. Race, eager, hate and each. I think definitely the A-G-E-R, focusing on what letter could go there. Chasm. Now if you didn't know what a chasm is, we can talk about chasms in the earth. These are sort of great big holes that appear where the sort of tectonic plates move apart and you end up getting these sort of chasms. So this is just an example of a chasm here. Chasm, mash, infirm and mill. So it's the M. Then we've got fund, ditch, band and dark. Halo, open, indigo and oven. So well done if you got all of those. Belt, tame, cheat and toad. Grade, ears, elude and envy. Envy being sort of jealous. Tray, you're coy. Now if you're coy, you sort of it's sort of a pretense of shyness. You sort of pretend you're shy, but you know more than you let on if you're coy. So we've got tray, you're coy and yeast. Main, noble. I've just got a picture there of some people who are clearly noble, so aristocratic. Main, noble, heaven and name. And then we've got boy, youth, unity and yet. And one activity you can do with this, certainly like I've been sort of showing you as you go down through, is do try and consider how many different letters you could actually put in front of some of the letter strings. So this could be quite a good game you could actually play, whereby you just write down, so I'm just doing it here, where you write down the letter strings and then you can try and see what other letters possibly could you get that could go after it. Okay, so that could be quite a good bit of fun to have a go at something like that. Right, let's move on to the last question type. And this is hidden words. These are hidden 4-letter words. Now, it's important to remember they come between 2 words. Sometimes they could come across 3, so you might get 1, 2, 1. So if I had something like mast, for example. But generally, they're 3, 1, 1 letter and 3 letters, or 2 letters and 2 letters. Obviously, you wouldn't have a 4-letter word on its own. So you are not reading the sentence, that will waste time. You're just looking between the gaps, or when you've got the multiple choice sheet, I know you didn't, but when you do, you'll be able to use that to your advantage as well. So what have we got here? We've got lone, apex, which kind of means a climax or the top, or achievement at the apex. Road, between hero and defiantly. Grin and kiss. And then we've got drab, which means dull. So if you didn't know what drab meant, kind of means dull. Veto, so if you veto, you sort of vote against it. Rake, redo and hind. And let's have a look at the last set. So if we just double check, this was test 50 on the hidden words. Again, if you need to pause the video, you can. And we've got dare, between panda and reserve. Dove, mass, myth, vest. So just see, I've underlined where it comes. Sometimes if you want to just double check in terms of your letters, so you've got 2 and 2, 1 and 3. You got 1 and 3, and these can be quite good just to find in your reading books as well. So if you've got a reading book at home, just grab it, see how many 4-letter words you can find. Or you can do something I often do, which is a page race. So someone says a page number, you both go to the same page, and then you see who finds the first one. So that can be quite good fun. And the last set, we've got vain, onus. Now an onus is like a burden. So if you put the onus on someone, it's sort of to burden someone. Lure, to sort of encourage and lure someone towards something. Omen, and then rein. And we must just be a little bit careful on that last rein. That's the rein that you would use to steer a horse, your reins. Okay, I think that is it. Thank you very much for watching this video. Thank you for going through your homework and being so diligent with your homework all the way through this block. We look forward, of course, to seeing you in block 6. At this time, it's coming up for half term, so I hope you have a wonderful half term. Thanks very much for watching. Bye-bye.